Hey y'all, today we are going to be talking about product of powers. So this is one of the exponent rules that we actually covered when we started our unit over polynomials, when we learned how to multiply binomials and monomials, and we were talking about multiplying variables with exponents. So the product of powers rule is something that is listed on your formula chart, but I've written it here for you. So on your formula chart, it's under the section that talks about your exponent rules or your properties of exponents. And on the formula chart, it's listed as a to the m times a to the n equals a to the m plus n. So this letter A is representing the base. So remember, the base is the number or variable that is getting the exponent, or that the exponent is on. So m and n are representing exponents. So basically what this rule is saying is that if you're multiplying two things that have the same base, so see how A is the same, then what you're going to do is you're going to keep the base, so see how my answer has an A, and then you actually wind up adding the exponents together. So that's what I wrote here. Multiplying powers with like bases, you're going to keep the base and add the exponents. Now for this example, what I've done is I've given an example that's similar to one that I gave you in class whenever we talked about this the first time. So notice here the problem says x squared times x to the fifth. So since I am multiplying powers with like bases, so I see they both have an x as the base, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep the base and I'm going to add the exponents. So notice in my answer I kept the base of x and then I added 2 plus 5 to get an exponent of 7. So x squared times x to the fifth is equivalent to x to the seventh power. Now for those of you who kind of need that visual reminder, remember an exponent is telling you how many times to multiply the base by itself. So x squared means x times x. And x to the fifth means x times itself 5 times. So that's x times x times x times x times x. So if an exponent is telling you how many times to multiply the base by itself, then once I wrote this in expanded notation, I noticed that I'm actually winding up multiplying x by itself 7 times. And that is why you are able to just add those exponents, and that gives you your new exponent. So today what we're going to be doing is we're going to just review this concept and apply it with monomials. So remember, a monomial is one term. So one thing that I'm going to bring to your attention, because this is a common mistake, is if your variable has a coefficient, then you should be multiplying those coefficients as normal. So our multiplication of just regular numbers doesn't change. We still just multiply. So let's work an example just to kind of show you what I'm talking about. So our first example today is going to be 9x to the fourth y times negative 2y. All right, so the first thing that I'm going to do is I am going to be making some markings on my paper just to help you guys organize yourself. So what you want to do is you want to multiply coefficients by coefficients and then like variables, because in order to use our rule, we have to multiply powers with like bases. So I am going to multiply 9 times negative 2. So 9 times negative 2 is equal to negative 18. Then I am going to multiply x to the fourth, and I notice there's no x in this term. So x to the fourth is just going to come over here and nothing is going to change. Then I'm going to multiply y times y. Okay, so I know I keep the base, And then if I'm multiplying y times y, that means I'm multiplying y by itself 2 times. So it becomes y squared. And this would be the product of 9x to the 4th y times negative 2y. All right, so that kind of happened fast. So let's try another one. So our next example is going to be negative 15 y cubed times 5x squared y. All right, so once again, I'm going to multiply coefficients by coefficients. So I'm going to use my calculator. I'm going to multiply negative 15 times 5, and I get negative 75. Then I am going to multiply, okay, so notice right here, it's similar to this one, only this time the negative 15y cubed came first. But look right there, there's an x squared, and this one doesn't have an x term, like an x in the monomial. So I'm going to bring that x squared over. Then I'm going to multiply y cubed times y. So think about that. That's y times y times y, that's what y cubed means, times another y. So this has like a little exponent of 1. So 3 plus 1 would make y to the 4th. So you keep the base and you add those exponents together. And that would be the product. All right, let's try another one. Let's try 3x to the 4th, y to the 4th, times negative 5x cubed y to the 5th. All right, so I'm multiplying, so I'm going to use my rule. So step 1, I'm going to multiply a coefficient times a coefficient. So 3 times negative 5 is negative 15. Next, I'm going to multiply x to the 4th times x to the 3rd. So look at our rule. Remember, we're going to keep the base, so we bring the x over, and I'm going to add the exponents. 4 plus 3 is 7. All right. Now I'm going to do y to the 4th times y to the 5th. Same base. I'm multiplying, so I'm going to keep the base, y. I'm going to add the exponents. 4 plus 5 is 9. And this would be our product. All right. Hopefully you're starting to get the hang of this. It's fairly straightforward. If you can just look at the rule and then do what it says, then you should be fine. And like I said, the only thing you have to remember is those coefficients you multiply as normal. So our last example, we're just going to work one more, is going to be negative 11 x to the 4th, y to the 5th, times 2x to the 5th, y squared. Okay, so step 1, we are going to multiply coefficients. Negative 11 times 2. That would make negative 22. Step 2, I'm going to multiply x to the 4th times x to the 5th. So that would be multiplying powers with like bases. So I'm going to keep the base, which is x. I'm going to add those exponents. 4 plus 5 is 9. Then I'm going to move over to the y's. So y to the 5th times y squared. I'm going to keep the base, which is y, and I'm going to add the exponents. 5 plus 2 is 7. And that would be the product. So the most important thing here is that you understand what the rule is. So the first thing you have to do is identify that, hey, I am multiplying. I know I'm multiplying because I don't see a symbol, an addition or subtraction, in between this term and the next term. Remember, these parentheses imply multiplication. Once I identify that I'm multiplying, then I'm grouping together the things that are alike. That's what these arrows, these color-coded arrows, are supposed to be helping you with. So notice I started with the coefficient, and I multiplied coefficient by coefficient, and I wrote the answer. Then I applied my exponent rule. So on the first two, they had x's where the other term didn't. So that x just came over and was part of my answer. Because remember, this in itself is a multiplication problem. I'm multiplying negative 18 times x to the fourth times y squared. Okay, so I brought that x to the fourth over. And then the next step was to deal with the y's. So I had a y to the first power times a y to the first power. So I kept the base, which was y, and 1 plus 1 was 2. All right, so these notes were fairly short. If you have questions or you need any extra support, please contact your teacher. You can send them a remind. You can contact them through email, or you can join us on Microsoft Teams for our tech and content help, where we will work a few more of these and you can ask questions. Please don't forget to log on to DeltaMath and complete the practice that goes with this assignment. That's where your grade will come from. So if you need help with your login information, please contact your teacher for that as well. You guys have a fantastic